And joining me now from Thornhill is Brad Ockrant and Danelle Clarke. Welcome to the CJN Daily.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, it's great to meet you, and thanks for being here. So, we need to know, you live in Beardmore, which is about a 15-hour, 12-hour drive north of Toronto, way at the top of Lake Superior.
Yeah.
What were you doing in Toronto at this time? Why are you here visiting?
Well, because of COVID, we haven't been able to see, my side of the family for
2 years.
2 years. Yeah, 2 years. So we all got vaccinated, and we figured, cases started dying down a little bit. Then just before the Delta variant came out is when we had decided that we're double vaccinated. Let's drive down. We're not going to fly, and we're just going to see, like my side of the family, and my kids haven't seen them for 2 years. And when you're dealing with kids, that's a huge gap, right? Especially we had a 2-year-old when we left the last time we seen them, and now she's 4, right? That's a huge gap. So we drove down. It's a 16-hour drive nonstop. Well, just gas and food, and just see everybody and kind
Do
of
some fun stuff.
Yeah, enjoy the time. Yeah.
Right, because where you live, you should describe it for me. You've had a very hard summer with boil water advisories and smoke from forest fires. How has that been?
Boring.
Yeah.
A lot of staying home, and when we do get to go out, it's been
Smoky.
small periods of time because of how smoky it's been, and
Can't leave the house without smelling fire.
it's been bad. It's been smoky all summer. You can't see the sun, like any direct sunlight, and the bugs have been bad, and it's been really hot
and dry.
and there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do in Beardmore. Our community is only 250 people, if that.
That's with their dogs.
Yeah, it's super small, nothing to do. We have no stores, no gas stations, anything like that. So the whole going out thing is very limited.
So let's tell our audience a little bit why you're living there, the two of you. Why Beardmore, and what is the background to where you were raised, Danelle?
So Beardmore is my hometown. I was born in Thunder Bay, raised in Beardmore for most of my life. The only time I really moved away was I moved to Toronto with Brad. But Brad and I have been together for 10 years now, 3 kids. We started off in Thunder Bay, and Beardmore just being my hometown, and there being work available, that's what brought us to Beardmore.
And you were born as part of a First Nation. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
I was born, when I was born, I was only 50% Native at the time in the government's eyes because my father never signed my birth certificate. I was born in Thunder Bay, and my band is called Mingwi Niashi Anishnaabe, and that is Sam Point, which is located on Lake Nipissing, about 15 minutes from Beardmore. It's an undeveloped reserve, so people are just starting to move back there. There's only maybe 4 or 5 houses at the moment, but they're building more as time goes on.
The houses are brand new. They just put them up the last couple of years. Before that, there was absolutely nothing. Yeah.
No, there was nothing down there. Camping, people went camping, but before, like many, many years ago, when my grandfather's mother was young, she lived down there as a community. And then something happened with the dams on Lake Nipissing where they opened them up and they flooded the land. So everyone had to escape their homes and everything and left. And we just got our land back about 10 years ago.
They now call it by, sorry, I was muted. They now call it by the First Nation name and not Sound Point, right?
Yes, we're trying to move away from the Sound Point. And our first road, actually, the first very road they named was Copper Thunderbird Road, which was from Norval Morrisseau, who was also a member of the band.
I believe that was his native name was Copper Thunderbird, I believe.
Something like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you guys met how? I mean, Bradley, you're a Jewish kid from Thornhill. You went to Jewish school. How did you meet?
So it's actually a very funny story.
Very
random story. I was dead set in becoming a famous film producer. I thought that was my destiny. And so Thunder Bay has a really good film school, Confederation College. So I had got accepted up to Thunder Bay, and I was still in Toronto. I was going to be moving. I remember this was during the weekday, and I was moving on the Sunday. And I we happened to she happened to come across my picture, which on Facebook, which happened to be
A movie.
a picture of these two comedians in a movie. And she says, she sent me a message, not knowing who I was. We're complete strangers, just coincidentally sent me a message saying, I like those guys, they're very funny. She admit later she did that. She was hanging around with friends and she thought it was a funny joke to interact with random people.
It was a
Facebook.
dating
It was
thing
like-
on Facebook.
You weren't
It was-
stalking him or whatever.
No, I had no idea what he looked like or anything.
Actually, Facebook at this time used to have an app called Are You Interested? And it was, you would go through all these different profiles and click yes, and it would send them a message saying someone said they were interested in you. And it's so you could find people to date, like an online dating.
Very, very cheap Tinder
But
kind of.
A lot of people used it as a joke, really, just self-esteem boost really is what it was meant for, right?
Or prank phone calls, yeah.
Or
Yeah.
pranks, yeah, that's right. So it was through there where she had seen my picture of the two comedians. That was my display picture. And she sent me a message saying, I really like those guys. They're really funny. And so, of course, I had to be a creeper profile there. So, well, she's actually, at the time, her Facebook said she was living in Thunder Bay. So, well, what are the chances that the only person that messaged me is living in Thunder Bay and I'm moving up to Thunder Bay on Sunday? So I sent her a message back and I said, look, I know this is going to sound weird, but I'm moving to Thunder Bay and I had absolutely nobody there, completely out of my element. Would you want to hang out or something? Which I don't know why she agreed to that. That sounds like the creepiest thing possible, but
I was told not to go by a few people, but I did anyway.
yeah. And so she said, yeah, well, so when I moved up there, there's actually a graveyard by the college, or by the college. So she says
University.
the university that's right. It goes from the college to the university, then to the graveyard. So she said the first time we met, she said, meet me by the graveyard. It's like, oh no, this isn't a good sounding meetup place. But then so we met at that street corner and we've been together ever since.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you knew that he was Jewish. You knew she was
Not a clue.
First Nation or no?
Honestly, and it's actually funny, she gives me a hard time for it. From her picture, I actually thought she was Asian, which it's just the way she was smiling, I guess. No, we had
Well, you come from Toronto. There's not many of us down here,
they're
like, I
not
can
well
tell.
known. There's natives around, but they're not well known. It's not like in Thunder Bay or Calgary or somewhere where
Oh, but
there's
I can tell. Like the very odd time I run into a native person, I can tell.
right. So
But it's only been maybe like 3-4 times in the whole time I've ever
Kind
been.
of like Jewish radar, we do the same.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, a Jew can always tell when someone else is Jewish, and so it's funny because I never would have even thought about. And she asked me many times, "Have you ever thought you'd end up with a native?" And I said, the thoughts never occurred to me because I've never been close to a native community where I ever
The
would have.
option is
Yeah,
there.
where I would have had that option.
So tell us a little bit about the legacy of residential school in your own family. First of all, Danielle, I know you've talked a bit about it and on Facebook a little bit, but I'd love to hear just more about what school and how many years and how it impacted them.
I'm not sure what the name was, but anyone who has Google can look it up. It was the only residential school in Thunder Bay where my grandfather and his oldest brother were sent to. Again, their parents were addicts into drinking. His mother had died of cirrhosis of the liver. So, the lineage of alcoholism and addiction goes back forever with us.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere. But again, they lived out in the bush in the middle of nowhere where his father had worked, back in the day where wood and everything was a big thing up there. So they got sent out to residential schools. They spent most of their young years, from what I understand, there. And they have many stories of running away, being caught, being brought back, the whole sad story of, looking out the window and mom and dad are coming to get us. Or I think my grandfather, I feel very bad for him because he doesn't have very good child memories of his parents. Lots of fighting, lots of drinking, lots of abuse in the household and stuff like that. And he had two younger siblings who went to live with grandparents, and they had two older siblings. That's the thing. A lot of Native homes too. There's multiple parents and multiple, different mothers, different fathers between children and everything. So that's typically a normal situation. But when he was in residential school, he suffered a lot of abuse, and
He doesn't
I don't-
talk too
he
much
doesn't talk about it very
specifics.
much.
But there's one story about the boy who always peed his bed.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to mention that story as
Yeah, he didn't. He said specifically he didn't get beat on, but he's also a very light-skinned, green-eyed person. He doesn't look very native if you look straight on at him. But he always told me this one story, that there was a boy because they all just had beds lined up in a big room, kid after each other in a bed. But he said a boy who was in a bed close to him would often wet his bed, and they would like grab his face and shove it in it and make him clean it up, and he'd have to do it every day. And
he said the kids would get together and try to help him clean it up before any of the adults found it, because to avoid from him getting beat or whatever else they were going to do. And it was definitely traumatizing time for all these kids, all the stuff that they went through, all the stuff that like Danelle said, even some of them may not have gone through it physically themselves, but just sitting there and witnessing someone that you call friend go through it, and maybe your brother, maybe your cousin, or maybe someone you just met, but just seeing someone of your own age or another child go through all these traumatic experiences is traumatic in itself, right?
I think that's what brought my grandfather and my uncle very close together. Like, they're together every day still. They hang out every day. They do stuff at home in Beardmore together every day. But ever since then, it was always just them two. So I think maybe even having his older brother into school with him helped protect him a little bit, because it was very rough. Even the kids would fight. And the only major abuse my grandfather went through wasn't from adult hands. It was from older children. And what they were probably taught or saw, and they were doing to the littler ones, which is
That makes
it's hard to
I've
talk
heard about this, of course. So all the stuff that and Bradley, you came into this family. How aware were you when you first moved to Thunder Bay about the abuse that happened in Thunder Bay, even the last few, for years, as well as the personal specific stories about your wife's family? How were you taught any of this at school in Toronto?
No, and that's the sad fact. I was completely ignorant to all this going on. And in fact, when I moved up and she's telling me all about racism and how it's hard for the natives, and I'm thinking, well, how can that be? I said, we're in the 21st century now. So racism is supposed to be long gone. Of course, there's, stuff happening in the States and, all over the place, but compared to how it was, and I was like surprised to see that this is still an ongoing thing all the time. It hasn't changed at all.
Oh, I can't walk into a shopping store in Thunder Bay. I can't walk in without them following me, or security following me around, watching what I do and stuff like that.
No, and her brother actually is a very good example. He wore suits to high school every day to show everybody he was different, so they wouldn't look at him as categorize him as another native. At one point, it was almost like he was ashamed of his skin color because of the way people were looking at natives, right? And it's but when I moved up, I knew nothing. I was ignorant. I never learned about any of this stuff in school. And that's the sad fact, is that they're not teaching all these hardships that the natives have gone through to everybody. If you don't have a connection to that area, if this never came out so publicly like it did now, if you didn't have a connection into the area, you would never have known that. Like, I never knew anything about residential schools, to be honest. I knew, the most I knew about natives is that the Europeans came over with Columbus and wiped out a lot of the native communities and took their land. That's the most I knew.
You
Anything,
learn that in school.
and I learned that in
Yeah.
school, yeah. But anything else when it came to racism or residential schools or anything, I was never taught about. Like I never learned in school about any residential schools of any kind, and I never witnessed any racism because there's not a native community here. Yeah.
No.
So let's talk about the Jewish aspect. When you met Bradley, right? Did you know about the legacy of the Holocaust, anti-Semitism? What did you know?
Before, when I was growing up, my grandparents used to tease me. I was born in raised in a Christian home, and my grandparents used to tease me that I'm going to find a nice Jewish guy one day, and that will be my husband. So sure enough, it worked out.
Yeah.
But growing up, I never really knew too much except about the Holocaust. You learn about that in school, and all the movies there are to it behind it. So I had a little bit of knowledge, but I don't think I met anyone Jewish before in my life before him or his family or anything like that. I didn't know. I kind of knew, from stereotypical movies like what Hanukkah is and stuff like that from cartoons on TV, but I never knew when they came around or anything like that. So I never knew much about what Judaism was or anything. I didn't even know he was Jewish until one of my friends went on Facebook and told me that he was. I never even knew. I don't know, like now that I've been around it so much, I can kind of tell when someone's a little bit Jewish and stuff, but like
Getting your Jewish radar going. All right, so
Yeah.
tell me about your shirts. You're wearing orange shirts. I didn't ask you to wear them when we
no, we did anyway.
your whole family's wearing them. Talk to me about this past. First of all, tell me about these shirts. Are they specially made? What about these particular shirts?
So a friend of mine who lives in Rocky Bay, the reserve near Beardmore, when this all started coming out, she owns a little company where she sells clothes and stuff. She made these shirts and was selling them. And whatever she made for profit, she would donate to an organization that was helping all these residential school findings and stuff like that. So as soon as she did that, I wanted to order for everyone, for the family and everything. And I thought it was important for us to wear it. On Canada's Day, we wore them all. And on the 30th, we'll wear them. And we plan on wearing them when we go to Wonderland. I don't mind showing it off. The more people that see it, maybe the more awareness it'll bring, or even questions. I don't mind answering questions for people if they ask, or spreading awareness.
What is that like, having 3 daughters who are Indigenous / Jewish?
I've said multiple times I won't move back to Thunder Bay. Thunder Bay has got so bad, and it's the main city in Northern Ontario. So all the reserves and everything, people are always coming down to Thunder Bay for shopping or medical reasons or anything like that. But it had, like, the crime and the drugs and everything has gotten so bad. And the racism, I don't want to raise Native girls there.
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable walking down the streets at night. Why would I want my teenage daughters to do that?
It wasn't too long ago a Native woman died because a group
Barbara
of kids,
Kenter, yes,
yeah,
she
a
was
group
known to
of
my
kids
family.
threw a trailer hitch at her, and they thought it was funny. And as they drove off, one of the guys said, "I hit one," and this is the
That
kind
was
of
Bushby. He got 8 years just now,
Yeah.
or just recently.
Yeah.
He got sentenced to 8 years.
But it's the reality is why would this be acceptable? Why would this be like, and I know it's not acceptable, he's getting punished for it, but why was he raised to think that was okay in the first place? Right? How was he taught that, this is the issue, right? And a lot of people don't realize, but kids pick up on the way you talk, right? So if you're always talking like, the natives are lazy, or
You're not born racist, it's learned.
Yeah, so clearly that kid, maybe it's from his experiences, maybe it's from his friends, maybe it's from his family, and the problem is that all it takes is one group of people to start spreading this hate, and then everybody else spreads the hate. And as a Jew, knowing how far it can go, right? And so when I hear stuff that's racist towards natives, it really pisses me off, because I don't want anyone in our family to have to go through any of the atrocities that on both sides, the native side and the Jewish side, have experienced. We should be, at this point in the human history, we should be beyond that now. We should be past all this hate. And the sad thing is that you're never going to be away from hate. There's always going to be people who don't like you because you're different or whatever. And then having children grow up in this type of world that,
you just don't want it for them.
And, they're going to be stereotyped because they're Jewish, and they're going to be seen as cheap or whatever the case is. But then also there's brown skin. They're very clearly brown skin, and they're going to be stereotyped because they're native, right? And it sucks because they're going to have to try harder than everybody else to prove that they're not what people think of them.
How has it been being married to a Jewish guy up where you live? Has that been a difficult thing for you?
No,
I'll ask you afterwards. I'll ask you afterwards how it has been being in the Jewish side, but
it's been awesome. Everybody loves it. It's a conversation starter for one. Again, a lot of people in my community don't see Jewish people, not every day anyway. You'd have to travel many hours away from here and more to find another Jewish person. But we do Hanukkah. We put the menorah in the window and stuff like that. And we do other ones too. We do a Seder when we're not here, and it's interesting. My kids are the only we're the only family in probably like a 200-mile radius who even thinks about doing any Jewish holiday.
You started counting on your Facebook page when they started finding graves, and you kept a running score. I don't know, that's not the right word, but I've been watching, why did you do that? And how has it been to see this summer, the discoveries of these graves for you both?
My heart has hurt a lot in the last little bit. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting how much. And I think I wrote down the numbers actually. We're in the 6,000s already. 6,000. Oh, one moment. I wrote it down yesterday.
It's, I went to see some concentration camps when I was 17. I went to Poland, I went to Auschwitz, and they had a case with all the shoes. And there was a little girl shoe, tiny little white shoe right in the front. And I'm sure they placed it there on purpose, but it was a very heavy heart hitting moment when you realize not everybody was safe from the trauma and the pain. And so when they're discovering all these children, it's their children, they're not grown-ups, they're not graves,
they're
they
thrown in
were
a hole
children,
on top of each other,
all ages, 5 years old, 4 years old, 10
some
years
young
old,
as 2, like babies being
thrown
chucked
into
in a hole.
ditch and covered, and that was it.
We're at 6,502 out of 20 places that they searched so far, and there was 139 schools in Canada, one being in Thunder Bay. So that number is growing by the day, and
it's never been a secret to the atrocities that the residential schools had. And it's not like this is unheard of information. We knew the whole time that residential schools were bad. Well, I knew as soon as I got into the community, but what's bringing this so to light is the magnitude, is that all these children that were just shoved into a pile and buried, not marked, and families not notified, hidden away from the rest of the world, like they didn't matter. And that's the part that connects the Jewish history with the native histories. They were seen as vermin, just like how the Jews were, that diseased. There was something wrong with them. And the whole point of the residential schools was to beat the demon out of them, right? That was the whole point of
they were dirty. Yeah.
Tried to wash them clean. They would be deloused and everything, trying to
scrubbed with bleach and stuff like that, trying to clean everybody. And
because they were seen as, like Danelle said, dirty or unclean, and that's which just is, you're only one step away from a complete genocide. And then now we're finding all these children that are being dug up, and you realize this was a genocide. It wasn't on the verge of being one. It was a genocide for the children, and that was the sad thing, is that they specifically geared it towards the children, because I guess maybe they figured the adults were too late or whatever, and they could save the kids. But it's just,
and now that this is all coming to light, they're not holding anybody responsible. There's been no apologies from the Catholic churches or anything like that. And what? They're just gonna like pretend that it never happened. You know, just something I read online. When 9/11 happened, it was worldwide. Everybody spoke about it. Like 205 or 2,500 people died or whatever it was. But it was on the news for days and days on end. But now we're over 6,500 kids who they found on Canadian soil, and you hardly hear about it.
Nobody's talking about it. Yeah.
Well, this summer, the Canadian government brought in for the first time, I know that Orange Shirt Day existed for a while, but now it's going to be a federal statutory holiday. Is called National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It's a new federal holiday. What do you make of that? Is that important to you at all? Does it help you? Does it, how do you feel about this?
I love that, again, it's being recognized. All over Canada now, people will have another holiday, and maybe they'll learn about why it's a holiday.
Yeah.
And again, the truth or the history behind it, and awareness. Again, there's just people learning about it. I don't mean to say this any rudely or anything, but a lot of white people don't know about what Natives have been through or what we're going through.
When people see this video and they hear the podcast, they'll learn something that they didn't know before. And whether you want to be pioneers or not, or trailblazers or not, you are doing a very important education yourselves right here. So that's really, I'm really grateful for that, and for having you on the CJN Daily. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for having us and giving us the opportunity to discuss all this stuff.